Welcome to Element Hobbies, and in this video we'll be doing a card-by-card breakdown of my Ob Nixilis Captive Kingpin deck. Hopefully Wizards doesn't send any Pinkertons to my home. Ob Nixilis Captive Kingpin costs 2 generic, 1 red, and 1 black mana for a total mana value of 4. It's a legendary demon with a power and toughness of 4/3. It has flying and trample, and when one or more opponents lose exactly 1 life, put a +1/+1 counter on him. Then exile the top card of your library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards. There's a couple things to keep in mind here. Firstly, the damage dealt has to be exactly 1 damage to get the effect. So if someone puts a Curse of Bloodletting on an opponent, your 1 damage effects to them will double, which is good, but you won't get the Ob Nixilis trigger, which is bad. Secondly, you can play the cards from Ob Nixilis until your next end step. So if this triggers on your turn, the card will only stick around until the end of your turn. This means that you want to prioritize spells and abilities that can trigger during your opponent's turns. A trigger on your opponent's turn gives you more time to figure out how you'll want to spend your mana and give you a chance to cast any instance. The last thing you want is to trigger Ob Nixilis a bunch on your own turn and having no way to play those cards. You'll end up with a good bunch of spells permanently exiled. We also need to address the elephant in the room, that being All Will Be One, an enchantment for 3 generic and 2 red mana that reads whenever you put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, All Will Be One deals that much to target opponent, target creature an opponent controls, or a planeswalker an opponent controls. Which means with any other 1 damage effect, Ob Nixilis Captive Kingpin goes infinite. Infinite +1/+1 tokens, infinite cards exiled, and infinite damage dealt. This deck video won't focus on that type of deck, but if you're interested in that, just run a bunch of rituals, a bunch of tutors, and a bit of disruption. Get Ob Nixilis and All Will Be One out, ping somebody, and it's GG's. Instead, this deck will focus on a longer game, with lots of ways to ping your opponent for 1, finishing them off with either lots of triggers of 1 damage, or a very large Ob Nixilis. This is Lingchi, or Death by 1,000 Cuts. The deck is going to be built around getting a critical amount of pings, to either facilitate getting more pingers with Ob Nixilis, or getting a large amount of tokens on Ob Nixilis and winning through commander damage. Since there are so many types of pinger cards in this deck, I've broken them down into 3 subcategories: Tims, Statics, and Zaps. This section will focus on the spiritual brethren of the original Tim, Prodigal Sorcerer, and will consist of creatures that tap to deal some variation of 1 damage, such as the color-shifted Prodigal Pyromancer and Cinder Pyromancer. Haste on your pingers is nice because you can play them and get Ob Nixilis triggers right away. I run 3 hasty pingers here in Cunning Spark Mage, Volshock Sorcerer, and Jeska Warrior Adept. Goblin Fireslinger and Chandra's Magmut can't hit creatures, but they're low mana valued cards, so you can cast them when you have an extra mana or 2 lying around. Thermo Alchemist, Spear Spewer, and Brimstone Trebuchet hit only players, but hit all players. This won't trigger Ob Nixilis multiple times, but hitting all opponents is good damage output. Sir Kara the Bold and Stuffy Doll start my higher mana value Tims, rounding out with Endbringer and Triskelion. These all have their pros and cons, but Triskelion seems to be the worst of the bunch. Feel free to swap it out if you want, this is more of a personal choice for me. Static pingers happen as a trigger to things you or your opponent will do naturally during the course of the game. The foundation of these static pingers are Copper Tablet, Barbed Wire, and Roiling Vortex. They are 2 mana value each, and will deal a damage on everyone's upkeep. If you get one of these into play on the turn after playing Ob Nixilis, they end up being the 3 damage, 3 +1/+1 counters, and 3 cards every round. Nightshade Harvester, Immolation Shaman, and Aether Sting will sit around and do work when your opponent just does things. Unless they decide not to play lands, or creatures, or use abilities, then you're in some real trouble. Mayhem Devil and Disciple of the Vault work really well in a treasure meta, which is now the entire game, thanks to Mark Rosewater. Defiler of Instinct and Electrostatic Field both will get you pings just for doing stuff you are already going to do anyways. We have a small, painful Pillow Fort package in Revenge of Ravens, Hissing Miasma, and Calculating Lich. Say painful Pillow Fort package 3 times fast. I can't do it and I've done like 10 takes. We also have a small anti-draw package in Underworld Dreams, Fate Unraveler, and Cataract Parasite. We round out the static pingers with Curse of the Pierced Heart and Chandra Awakened Inferno, low and high mana value constant pingers. Zaps are just a small package of instant pingers named after the card Zap, because that's what they do. These are instants that deal 1 damage and something else. Also, I will be playing Death Spark, no matter how bad it is, and you can't stop me. We can't always rely on dealing 120 points of damage with pingers, so we need some other win conditions like the previously mentioned All Will Be One. This deck doesn't run fast mana or tutors, so I don't mind running infinite combos you just have to draw into. That also goes for Exquisite Blood and Blood Artist combo. Originally the deck just had Exquisite Blood since some of your static pingers damage you as well, but I figured I might as well throw in the Blood Artist as another potential win con I may randomly luck into. Wound Reflection can turn all those pings into a serious threat. When an opponent is taking damage on their upkeep and their draw and when they play a land, that starts to add up, especially when doubled. Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots can make it hard to remove Ob Nixilis, and the Oceloth allows us to preserve the many +1/+1 tokens we can get on Ob Nixilis should he be removed. It's just Prosper. Prosper doesn't really fit into any of the other card classifications in this deck. It's just good. I guess it could count as ramp. I don't run a ton of board wipes because I want to be pinging, not hamstringing my opponents. Man, it's hard to rhyme with pinging. At least leave a like on the video for the effort. Damnation and Blasphemous Act are both staple board wipes for a reason, so they go here. Pestilence can do double duty as a creature removal and pinging. Remember, you deal 1 damage to everything with Pestilence, so your Ob Nixilis will grow every time you do a Pestilence trigger. This ramp package is pretty boring, so we start with the 2 most boringest ramp cards in the game, Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. I like Fire Diamond and Charcoal Diamond mostly because I have the Mirage versions and they look really cool. Really the only note I can put here is that since Ob Nixilis is a very powerful commander that wants to be in play as much as possible, so I only want ramp that can help bring out Ob Nixilis a turn early, which means anything more than 2 mana value is out. Black is the king of reliable removal, and we won't be playing any of that in this deck. Instead, we'll be focusing on red wacky removal like Chaos Warp and Wild Magic Surge. Bolt Bend seems very good when your commander has 4 power, or when your commander will be the target of a lot of removal. Ob Nixilis fits both requirements. Tibolt's Trickery seems very bad in most circumstances, but hey, better lucky than good, right? Rakdos Charm and Invasion of Azgul are 2 pingers with utility interaction. Having an army of Tims out means you can flip Invasion of Azgul if you really want to. Kazol's Fury can chuck a giant Ob Nixilis to close out a game, or can be played as a land, which I hear are needed to play this game. Speaking of lands, I run 5 utility lands. Shivan Gorge and Leech-Ridden Swamp add more ping options. Roadside Reliquary is good because we have a high number of enchantments and artifacts. Rogue's Passage is generally used to let Ob Nixilis swing for lethal, and Urza Saga is really just another way to get the Ozolith. I guess you could also make some constructs if you happen to have a bunch of mana rocks and like a copper tablet or something. From there, I just run the best Rakdos lands that I have. I go a little bit further down the chain of playable dual lands than I normally do. That's mostly because getting to 3 black mana pips for Underworld Dreams is a real concern, so some concessions had to be made. For basics, I run 12 mountains and 8 swamps. For this deck, I decided to go with the all different styles plan instead of the all matching basics like I normally do. So each of my basics in this deck is a mismatching full art foil. Now that we have the deck list sorted, we move on to how to proceed with this deck in the different phases of a normal Commander game. Early game, you just ramp and hope to land a turn 3 Ob Nixilis. From there, a turn 4 enchantment or artifact that will passively deal damage every turn is optimal, something like Copper Tablet or Underworld Dreams. This will put Ob Nixilis into a more threatening power and toughness range, while also giving you a lot of cards to continue the pressure. Mid-game, you can start trying to get commander damage on your opponents and keep building the card advantage through pinging. At this point, you might naturally luck into an All Will Be One win or a Blood Artist Exquisite Blood combo. Late game, you can finish people off with commander damage or the insane amount of pingers you can get into play. A giant Ob Nixilis can be Kazol's Furied or Rogue's Passage to finish players off. You can play this aggressively if you get an early Ob Nixilis going or play a long controlling game, dealing out death one cut at a time. If you would prefer to play a more classic control deck, check out this deck video on Afara God of the Polis. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to see more videos like it in the future, subscribe to the channel. It feels really nice when I get a subscribe notification, so thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.